Hello, how are you doing? Welcome back to the channel. I'm naming my England squad for the Six Nations. Steve Borthwick is going to be naming his on Monday, so I'm doing a little bit of a preview of that by naming the squad that I think I would pick. I'll be honest, I don't find this easy at all. I'll get into why in just a moment. There's a lot of question marks against names that I've got jotted down here, but I've done my best. So let me know in the comments down below what you make of it, what players you would include, what players you would take out of the squad that I've picked, and anything else that you want to mention. If you are new here as well, do subscribe to the channel. Six Nations on the horizon. There'll be a lot more content throughout the championships, so make sure you subscribe so you get it straight away. All right, let's get into it. The reason that I found this so difficult actually stems back to something which Eddie Jones mentioned in an interview on the Telegraph's Rugby podcast just before the start of the autumn, where they were doing an episode about selection. They spoke to him about that, and Eddie Jones said something really, really interesting, which was basically that within the Premiership, in terms of England selection, there's a couple of or a handful of exceptional players, and then there's lots of very, very good players, and it's working out which one of those very, very good players you want to select in your team. That's the hardest part in terms of the players that are available as England players. And I think that's quite true, actually. I find that quite true. When you actually go through it and you're trying to name, I've gone for a 36-man squad for the Six Nations. I think that's what Eddie Jones chose for his kind of wider squad ahead of last year's Six Nations. So I'm presuming it's going to be around that number. Well, if you actually sit down and try and name a 36-player squad, I think it's harder than you think. I think if you think about an England squad, there's the names that automatically jump out at you that you select quite quickly. But then the guys behind them, who you want to be the players pushing for selection and putting their hand up to be part of the squad and part of the matchday squad, I found a lot more difficult. And I think I'll get into that in this video here. But as I said, 36-player squad is what I've gone for. I'm not sure how many changes Steve Borthwick can make to the elite player squad. This is something which has been in the media over here in the UK. Normally in January you can only make 5 changes to what is a 45-player EPS squad. So trying to make it as simple as possible. 45-player EPS squad basically gives the Gallagher Premiership clubs an idea of which of their players could be selected and called up for England. It makes it easier, basically. There's also a certain amount of finance and recompense for those clubs as well. So traditionally, the England coach hasn't been able to pick outside of that 45 EPS squad, apart from 5 names. I have seen reports in the media that Steve Borthwick might be given the ability to basically have a clean slate and pick who he wants. The clubs might be willing to help him do that, but there's a bit of a grey area there. There's some conflicting reports, so I haven't really paid too much attention of who he thinks in the EPS and who isn't. I've just gone for my 36-player squad. So without further ado, let's get into it. Starting in the front row, loose head props. I've gone for 3 loose heads, 3 tight heads. Loose head props, I'm more excited by at the moment when it comes to England. For me, I've gone Ellis Genge, Val Rapava-Ruskin and Bevan Rodd. Ellis Genge, I think, has been on good form for England. He's been on pretty good form for Bristol, in a Bristol side who are pretty woeful at the moment at the bottom of the Premiership. Great ball carrier, leader in this current England squad. I think his selection is nailed on, really. He was in the World Rugby Dream Team of the Year. That kind of shows where his stature is in the game at the moment. I think Ellis Genge is an obvious choice. Val Rapava-Ruskin, I think you could argue, is the best scrummaging prop in the Premiership at the moment. Certainly the best English scrummaging prop. I would like to see him perhaps be given an opportunity. And then Bevan Rodd is just part of a sale pack that is just getting the job done at the moment. He's been in England squads before, so I've gone for him in that jersey. In terms of tight head props, I think this is more difficult. I've got Kyle Sinclair there. I actually don't think his form has been that great for Bristol or for England, but I couldn't really think of anyone else. I went for Kyle Sinclair. Dan Cole I've put in there, but that's a question mark over Dan Cole. Been on great form for Leicester. Hasn't played for England since the 2019 Rugby World Cup final. Is getting on in years. Is he going to be given an opportunity to come back because Steve Borthwick, having been at Leicester, knows what he can do, knows what he can do in terms of scrummaging? If England are looking to shore up that front row and give themselves a really powerful scrum, he could be a good option. But I do have a question mark over that, so I'm not too certain. And then Trevor Davison... Beg your pardon. Trevor Davison was the other name I jotted down, the Newcastle Falcons player. Again, a Newcastle pack who's just starting to go about their business pretty well at the moment. We have seen him part of some England squads. I put his name down, but as I say, tight head props, I personally found more difficult. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. As for hookers, I've only gone for 2. I think there'll probably be 3 in the squad, but given that it's my squad, I can do what I want. I've gone for 2. Jamie George, I think, is the obvious choice. And with Luke Cowan-Dickie injured, I've gone for Jamie Blamire, who again has been on the fringes of England squads, but we haven't necessarily seen breakthrough too much. But I've gone for him, the Newcastle Falcons player, to get an opportunity and see what he can do in that training camp under a new head coach. Okay, let's move on. Second rows and back row. I've got loads of names here. In all honesty, I've probably picked too many forwards. I'm aware of that, but I just found it difficult when selecting the balance of my squad. And particularly for second rows, this is the area where I have the most question marks over it, because I think we've got Johnny Hill and Maro Itoje. They have established themselves as the regular England second row pair. They will be part of that squad. I don't think anyone would deny that. It's who comes in after them that I think is a challenge. And it was a question that Eddie Jones was trying to answer in the autumn. We saw Dave Ribbons and Alex Coles both come into those positions in the autumn. Both did okay without being necessarily standout. So I've gone for Dave Ribbons, Ollie Chessum with that Leicester Tigers connection, who's done pretty well for the Tigers. Hugh Tizard as well, Saracens, former Harlequins, who again has been part of England squads. I think he's done a pretty good job for Saracens. And then George Martin as well. I know he's listed as a second row. He's played a lot at 6 for Leicester, so he has that ability to drop into the back row. But I'll be honest, I've got question marks over pretty much all of those guys. I could be quite easily swayed to go for someone else, whether it's Alex Coles, whether it's any of the other number of players that people might be thinking of. But Dave Ribbons, Ollie Chessum, George Martin, who also is more of an option in the back row, and Hugh Tizard as well. But I think it's still an issue for England. Who's the third and fourth choice second rows behind Itoje and Johnny Hill? I honestly don't know at the moment, but that's who I've gone for. As for the back row, again, this is another area of huge contention for England. It's a massive area of strength. Tom Curry is going to miss the opening couple of rounds of the Six Nations, so I haven't included him. If he was fit, he would be nailed on as a starter in that back row. But I've got Ben Earl, Alex Dombrandt, Tom Pearson from London Irish, Courtney Laws, Lewis Ludlam, Billy Vunipola and Sam Simmons. I think that gives me a little bit of balance and different options within that back row. Ben Earl was the Premiership Player of the Year last year. He's so explosive. He's good over the ball. He's really dynamic. Haven't seen him in an England jersey for a little while. A lot of fans, I think, will want to see him at least given an opportunity. I think there's a good chance that he will. His selection would be a headline if he was to be selected in Steve Borthwick's squad, but kind of speaks for itself. In terms of the number 8 options, gone back to Dombrandt and Billy Vunipola. I still think that they're probably the 2 best options, with Sam Simmons as well, giving you someone who's just that little bit more explosive. And then Lewis Ludlam, Courtney Laws, offering a huge amount of physicality in that back row. And then Tom Pearson, the reason I've selected him is I heard Alan Dimmock on the Ruck podcast this week talking about essentially how efficient Tom Pearson has been at competing at the breakdown. And I wasn't sure what the situation was with Jack Willis, whether he's available for selection because he's playing over in France. There was a part of that grey area that I wasn't too sure about. So presuming Jack Willis can't be selected, I think Tom Pearson actually gives you quite a good option of someone who is going to really compete at that breakdown, who doesn't give away many penalties either. With no Tom Curry, I think he's maybe a little bit of a dark horse, someone that could be a good option. Coming from London Irish. So those are my forwards. Probably got too many of them, but that's who I have jotted down and selected. Scrum half, no more Ben Youngs for me. I've gone for Jack Van Portfleet, Alex Mitchell and Raffi Quirk. Raffi Quirk, who has been quite injured this season. It's been Gus Waugh who's been starting a lot for Sale Sharks and doing a pretty good job, by the way. But Raffi Quirk is on the Sale bench this weekend, heading into Europe again. So I've gone for him. Alex Mitchell, who Northampton fans have been crying out to be given an opportunity for a long time. And then Jack Van Portfleet, who has actually been playing behind Ben Youngs a lot at Leicester Tigers. I'm aware of that, but I think when we've seen him in an England shirt, he has shown what he can do, even though he had a bit of a tough time against New Zealand, although I actually thought it got blown out of proportion, his performance against the All Blacks in that draw, because he threw the intercept early on. I went back and watched that game. And overall, actually, I think he did an all right job. So those are my 3 scrum halves. Fly half, I've only gone with Marcus Smith, which again Steve Borthwick may well name someone else to fly half. The reason I've only gone for him is because I'm picking Owen Farrell in my centres. So Marcus Smith fly half, centres Manu Tuolangi, Henry Slade, Owen Farrell and Dan Kelly from Leicester Tigers. People seem to think that Owen Farrell should be the fly half instead of Marcus Smith. I said in a video the other day, I think some of England's best performances in the last few years, you think about the Eddie Jones era, the Six Nations Grand Slam, the winning tour of Australia, the World Cup final in 2019, it's been when Owen Farrell has been playing centre for England. I don't have an issue with him playing centre. And yeah, I would be happy to give the Marcus Smith, Owen Farrell axis that little bit more time. You then could have Henry Slade outside him if you want another ball carrier. You've got Dan Kelly, Tuolangi, who could play outside, who will hopefully get you over the game line. But then, as I say, Farrell can flip into the centres if you want a more traditional 12 in Dan Kelly or Tuolangi there with Slade at 13. I think you've got options with that pairing in the centres. So that's the reason I've gone for those four. Wings and fullbacks, I don't know whether I've been greedy here or probably the right amount because of the amount of forwards I picked elsewhere. I guess you'd maybe pick another centre and a fly half and perhaps stay with this amount in terms of wings and fullback. Freddie Stewart, Caden Murley, Jack Noel, Tommy Freeman, Elliot Daly, Anthony Watson and Ollie Hassel-Collins. Freddie Stewart is one of the first names on the team sheet at the moment, in my opinion. He's probably the starting fullback. And then I think you could do all sorts of different things with the wingers. I wanted to try and add a little bit more pace in there, which is why I went for the likes of Tommy Freeman, welcoming Anthony Watson back, Ollie Hassel-Collins as someone who could make his debut as well, who's really exciting and been really good for London Irish. Caden Murley as well, and then you've got the old head in Jack Noel. And Elliot Daly has been playing so well for Saracens. He can cover fullback, he can cover wing, potentially could cover centre if you wanted him to, although I'm not too sure you'd throw him in there at the moment at international level. And I've been critical of Elliot Daly in the past, particularly around kind of 2018, 2019, 2020. I didn't think he was playing that well to be selected at international level, but he has been brilliant for Saracens. If you're picking on form, he should be in your England squad. So that's who I've gone for. Anthony Watson, as I say, we all know what he can do and has been on brilliant form or looking to get back to great form for Leicester Tigers. There's been some snippets of really good play from him, so I'd bring him back into the England fold. He can also play fullback as well. So again, there's balance there of different players and how you could move them around. That's my England squad. Now it's time for you. Hit the comments. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I've made an absolute howler. The players that I should have selected, people I've forgotten. I'm sure there's someone's going to put a comment down below and I'm going to think, yeah, I should have mentioned that person and immediately make me rethink who I should have selected, particularly in terms of the props and the second rows. I think that's where I could be swayed quite heavily. But that's what I'm thinking. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And on Monday, Steve Borthwick names his England squad for the Six Nations. I will be at Twickenham for the press conference. I'll do a video from there reacting to all of that. So keep an eye out on the channel for that one. All right, I'll see you in the next one.